If you think of the pie chart of revenue that's coming in, a creator is mostly going to be in the category of media. But what really seems to be missing is the consumer products revenue stream, physical product as something a creator can sell. When you look at how does a brand monetize themselves, how does a celebrity monetize themselves, and a creator kind of being somewhere in between those two things, physical product is where I wanted to go and figure out how to build a business around.
Welcome to Sponsored Post Podcast, behind the lens of how influential content is made. I am Justin Moore. I'm the founder and CEO of Trending Family, which is an influencer marketing agency that launches campaigns with family-friendly influencers. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by David Sievers, who is the founder and CEO of Akira Coffee Company, which helps creators build their brands by creating high-quality coffee for their audiences to love. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me on.
So great to have you. So why don't we start it off? Tell me a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get into this space? Maybe starting with your work with Maker, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, if you really want to hear a crazy story, sometime ask me before Maker. But got into Maker really early on in the MCN kind of starting days. Around 2008, was employee number one on their payroll. The founders actually made me change the payroll because I had created it to move me to number 4 so they could be the first 3. And over the course of 6.5 years, built our talent networking business. So all of the creators that were in the Maker network, all 70,000 of them, were in the groups that I created and managed, and helped us build kind of our deep knowledge and understanding of what is it like to be a creator, in the early days when nobody really knew what that was like.
Interesting. And so how did that start? Were these close personal friends of yours, or how did they tap you to be employee number 1/4?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess you are going to ask me how I got into it. Yeah, really. Actually, I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is where I was born and raised. And one of my friends went viral on YouTube for how to solve a Rubik's Cube in 2007. This was, I believe, the year right before Google acquired YouTube. And he won YouTube's best instructional video of the year, which was against Soulja Boy for how to do that dance, if any of you remember that. And I became his accountant. He needed help with money. He didn't understand what to do with income, what were taxes, how to plan. And so I helped him by, forming his corporation that held his YouTube business and setting up his payroll and helping him plan and manage tax. And through that, in the very early days of the YouTuber space, nobody had that available to them. And so through word of mouth, I became the kind of biggest bookkeeper accountant to YouTubers that there was.
Amazing. That's such an interesting genesis story. And so obviously the story of Maker and the explosion and proliferation of MCNs is, part of YouTube history now. And obviously you were with Maker through the Disney acquisition and was with Disney for a time. And so tell me about kind of how you came to the decision of you wanted to leave and kind of start your next thing. And how did you initially come to the idea about Akira Coffee Company?
Yeah, so getting to work at Disney was an amazing experience for me. I was surrounded by so many senior executives that were really, really good and had spent, 15, 20 years building their careers inside of Disney. And I got to really experience how Disney monetizes a brand. And one thing I found really fascinating was that in the Disney Channels group, for example, they get a huge credit from the movie studios because about 30% of parents who took their kids to see Moana said they did so because they heard about Moana on the Disney channels. And when you look at the film studio, they're not a huge profit center for Disney. If you look at their public financial statements, the film studio is really, relatively speaking, a small part of Disney. And what is really big about Disney and the way they really monetize their brands is through consumer products and through their live experiences at the parks. And so as I was thinking about how do I transition the creator business of Maker into what does Disney do, I was really looking at consumer products and how can creators build additional lines of revenue stream beyond just the media money that they bring in now, similar to how Disney had done that in a very mature brand sense.
Were you looking at it from purely kind of a financial perspective, given your accounting background and experience at Maker and things like that, to try to find areas of revenue that were more predictable and that were not governed by the social platforms that these creators were posting on?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if you think of the pie chart of revenue that's coming in, today, a creator is mostly going to be in the category of media, whether it's the ads that run on their content or the brand deals that they do. That's all kind of in the bucket of media. Some creators, specifically on Twitch, have started to make subscription revenue. Patreon's another great example of direct revenue that creators can earn from their fans. But what really seems to be missing is the consumer products revenue stream, physical product as something a creator can sell. And when you look at traditional celebrities, you see them doing this. I talk sometimes about George Clooney creates his own tequila brand and Ryan Reynolds makes his own aviation gin, which is, by the way, is fantastic. I've been drinking myself personally at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at how does a brand monetize themselves, how does a celebrity monetize themselves, and a creator kind of being somewhere in between those two things, physical product is where I wanted to go and figure out how to build a business around.
Interesting. And so why was coffee something that you gravitated towards as kind of the first product vertical that you wanted to focus on?
After Maker, I actually got recruited to be the chief operating officer of a coffee company. And so I got into coffee. We were building hipster coffee startup shops in Florida. And while I was there, I basically got a hold of one of my best friends in the space. Her name's Dodger. You know, my wife was a bridesmaid in her wedding. We're very close. I was there with her when she very first became a creator. And I basically said, hey, I have no idea if this will work, but do you want to launch your own coffee company? And she was like, yeah, let's do it. She had a natural affinity for coffee. She actually, one of her daily shows that she was doing on Twitch was called Coffee Time. And it had nothing to do with coffee itself. It was just she would drink a cup of coffee while sharing the daily gaming news with her audience. And so there was a natural connection to coffee. I was at a coffee company at the time, so it made sense to start there. But I really love coffee. I think it's a fantastic product. I'm really looking, though, for three things when I look at building physical product brands with creators. One is an ability to impact quality. So we don't want to be in the race to the bottom, the lowest common denominator of whatever the product is. I believe that creators are creating goodwill and a connection to their audience, and you need to do right by that connection by providing a quality item. Two is high margin is great, of course. I believe direct to consumer businesses should be profitable and they should be able to monetize for their partners, that being us and the creator. And then the third thing I'm looking for is a recurring purchase. And so what a lot of creators do today is build their own merch, and they'll go on, a website where they can upload some art and they can start selling a t-shirt. Well, for me, the problem with that is once that t-shirt is sold, that's the end of that transaction and there's nothing more to really do. Whereas with coffee or tea or hot cocoa or the products we're building that we're putting on our shops, there's something where you consume them, you're out of coffee, you need more coffee. And so we build subscription into our products by making sure they're consumable. And so we offer discounting to our customers for subscribing to the coffee to get it sent to them over and over again. But those three things are really what I'm looking for as I build physical products.
Interesting. And so I know you recently announced the acquisition of Fea Candle. And so how has bringing that brand into the fold, how is that affecting kind of your overall vision as being your next vertical you're tackling?
Yeah, I mean, Fea's founder, Sarah, is an incredible entrepreneur story. She started Faya out of her car in the midst of a very difficult life set of circumstances. And from day one has donated a meal for every single candle she's ever sold. And so she's really, for me, been an excellent role model in corporate social responsibility and giving back. And actually, the way I met Sarah was through our program at Akira, which donates a meal for every package we send out. And through that relationship, realized that Sarah had all three of the check marks I just talked about. A higher quality. She's using soy wax instead of paraffin. She hand pours them. It's all ethically made with, labor, fair living wages, things like that. It is recurring. You buy a candle and then you burn it and then you need another one. And it has good margins in them. So what we didn't have though at Akira that Faya does is a wholesale business. And so she primarily sells through boutiques, and she's on major retail sites like JCPenney and Kohl's and some others are in development. And so I was looking at this like, wow, she's got this great ability to sell through different sales channels. I have a great ability to build brands with creators. Let's bring candles, soaps, reed diffusers, the things that Faya is good at making into the creator world. So we really intend now to find lifestyle, beauty, fashion creators who want to build coffee and soap and, brands like that. And we want to launch those with them.
I guess one question that I have is, you think about the initial MCN model in terms of kind of hoovering up as many creators as possible in terms of helping them with their online business, or growing their following and things like that. But it always seemed to be a harder thing to scale to help creators build their businesses offline, right? So, as we've seen a lot of MCNs start to consolidate and things like that, you've started to see other companies that are servicing the creator economy, like Akira Coffee and like Pocket Watch in the family and kid space, focusing on really doubling down on kind of this merch side of it. Do you think that this is kind of the next step for a lot of creators to think about diversifying their overall businesses, that we're going to see more and more of these types of companies take this approach?
I think it's a step, but unlike the MCN model, it's not for tens of thousands of creators. It's really for, as creators are getting into the later stages of establishing a permanent audience, they have their show formats down, they know what content they're making, they know who they work with, they've built a brand business, then it's time to look at how do I build additional revenue streams that aren't based on an algorithm, they aren't based on an adpocalypse. If a brand is coming along, they're not in charge of my life. When you look at the issue of creator burnout, a creator has to keep creating content forever. There's no retirement plan. There's no benefit plan in any of this for creators. And so one of the things we're really looking to do is establish a little bit of an independence from the reliance on these algorithms and continually making content. A great example I give of that is Dodger had a kid. She's now a mom. She had to take time off for a maternity leave. And while she was taking time off, she was definitely not creating content, but the coffee brand continued to operate and we continued to generate sales and revenue. So it is a way to, convert what you have done into a more permanent business. Dodger's stated goal is, one day she wants to have her hands in a number of businesses that she's been a part of and helped start, and that she would have the option to not be a creator anymore. And I'm not saying that's imminent and her fans don't need to worry in any way, but that's ultimately what I think every creator needs to be thinking about is what is the end game to all of this? And how do I build my life so that I can retire one day?
What is the component of a successful standalone product line that can survive without ongoing promotion from the creator? Because one of the things you mentioned about the wholesale business of Faya, I'm curious, like with these brands that you're kind of helping launch for creators, a big part of it is, like you mentioned, they already have a notoriety, they have a following, they have formats that they've already been working on for a long time. So it kind of makes sense. But how do you create a business that can survive without the creator being involved indefinitely, you know?
Yeah, so we definitely rely on the creator to launch the brand and to promote very heavily to their audience. But one of the things we're doing is creating, on behalf of these new coffee brands, a new Twitter account, a new Instagram account, a new Facebook account. We do email marketing list collection. We have recurring product subscription modules built into our stores. And so, what our goal is over the very long term is to build fandom of the coffee brands in and of themselves for what they are. And a coffee brand is going to look a lot like what the creator is, but it's going to be a little different. And it can talk about coffee every day. Whereas if a creator were going to do that, it would get really annoying to the audience. And it can email out to its audience discount codes, and that doesn't seem cheesy, whereas it does if a creator does that. So where we eventually want to go is we want these brands to be able to stand on their own. Yes, they're heavily based originally on the creators, and we rely on the creators to promote and push initiatives now. But over time, we want to be able to transact sales and conduct business without the creator having to do any of that work themselves.
Are you able to share how many creators you've helped launch brands for to date?
We have 3 live, is what I guess I could say. I will say our pipeline is much bigger than our business is today, but we're being very selective. One of the things we're trying to do is make sure we're not competing with ourselves. And so we don't want to launch 2 coffee brands with 2 different creators who are in very similar content categories. So we look at things like audience overlap reports and making sure that we're tapping into audiences that really don't have much to do with each other. And what I think is if we can be really good about that, that we can launch coffee many times over without really creating channel conflict with ourselves.
Right. So, I mean, obviously there's probably hundreds of thousands, millions of creators that are out there. So talk me through the criteria that you use to vet possible candidates to launch brands with. And like, is it just like a heavily engaged audience? Is it someone who, already talks, has an affinity for coffee, or like walk me through that process?
Yeah. And let me disclaim this by saying we're very open to anyone who has an idea of what would make a great creator. But so far, I have found a couple of themes that seem to resonate across all categories of content creator. The first one is, do they address their audience directly? And what kind of relationship do they have to their audience? So someone who's making a show to their audience is going to come across a little bit differently than someone who is directly speaking to or engaging with and interacting with their audience. So looking at things like, does a creator say, hey guys, here's what's going on in my life? Do they share a little bit of their story? Does their audience have a reason to be fans of them? Or is it just a show format that's working? So I'm looking for a genuine connection to the audience. I'm definitely looking for a genuine connection to the product. I don't think it will ever work to go to a creator who doesn't care about coffee at all and have them try to tell the story of high quality craft coffee and why they care about it to their audience. And then I think the other thing we look for is, we have some preconceived notions around the size and reach. I'm looking for, are they growing or shrinking? But what I've found is that very highly niche creators versus very general, broad entertainment creators, the niche ones really have much better conversion rates than the very broad ones. And so where I used to think there was going to be a magic number of followers that we would need in order to partner with someone, now I'm looking for more like, what kind of community are you in and what kind of content are you making and how specific is it? Because we're more likely to be able to tell a really good story with you to your audience than if you're really huge. So I say that, but one of the top 50 all-time most subscribed channels is one of our currently launched coffee brands in Smosh. And so obviously really large scale is something, that works well for us and we're excited about. We've just also realized we can get into some really crazy communities with the products we have.
Interesting. And so I guess I'm curious, like, what is the business pitch that you give to potential creator partners about why a Kira Coffee company should help them launch their coffee business versus them doing it solo? Because I think there's a lot of, especially like OG, I call them OG creators, the ones who have been, around before the YouTube partner program, or like they've been around a while and who have been burned, through various bad MCN relationships over the years, or just in general, they kind of are a little more nervous to enter into partnerships like that. But even some of the newer ones, newer creators who are coming up are just smarter. I feel like people are just a lot savvier now, and there's a lot more resources that folks have to understand which business relationships they should get into. And so, like, what's the pitch that you give to people in terms of the value that you can bring to them? And like, I guess kind of what level of support is needed from them versus what you guys will handle?
Yeah. And I will say, as far as sophistication goes, I view that as a good thing. Our deals have passed through the largest entertainment law firms, major talent agencies. And so we're checking the boxes that those more sophisticated creators that you're talking about are looking for and their teams are looking for. But what I would generally say our pitch is where do you want to be 10 years from now? And it's very easy as a creator to chase temporary income and short-term deals. And so even creators who are getting into coffee are tending to do license deals where they're putting their name on someone else's brand. And I think that those deals are going to run out, and that right now there's a lot of speculation on what an influencer can do.
You talking about like a beauty creator partnering with Too Faced or, on a palette or something like that, you mean?
Yeah, I just think whenever a creator puts their name on someone else's brand, the question that people should be asking themselves is, who owns that email list once it's built? Who owns the brand once it's built and established? What are the long-term business options by going into this deal? And for us, the only way we work, 10 years from now is if we're still running these creator brands 10 years from now. Whereas most of the brands people would look to partner with, they're looking to tap into your audience for a little while and pay you for that. But then ultimately they're going to look 5 years from now, there's a different audience they're trying to tap into. So we want to be the long-term business partner. When Dodger goes to her audience, or when any of our creator partners go to their audience, what they're saying is, I own a coffee company. That to us is the big difference, is they own the name that we create with them, and we partner with them to operate it. And so ultimately they have a very large final say in the way we operate, what kind of content we can put out there in their name, how do we handle tweeting every day, things like that. Those are all in control and have, the final approval comes from the creator. And I think that's a big difference for us as well.
So you've written quite a bit about why making a difference and kind of building a company with purpose from day one is super important to you. I'll pull a quote from an article you wrote. It said, ethically, sustainably, and responsibly sourced coffees and teas. We know that the farms and practices used on those farms to ensure high quality and good sourcing, we pay an average of 3.5 times the global commodity rate for coffee. And so why was that an important aspect of the business when you were first starting?
Yeah, I think just a number of things have come into my life that have made me ultimately decide I want to run a socially responsible business. One part of it was just seeing how temporary Maker was and how we were fueled by investors and VC dollars, and we couldn't take the time to grow each part of our business the right way, the way I would really like to. I'm very proud of what we did at Maker, and I think a lot of people on our team did incredible work. But if I could go back and change a couple things, I would. And one of them is building a long-term sustainable business. I think the other thing is when we sold Maker, I was a very small shareholder, very tiny percentage of what was a pretty big exit. And as I made my first money I had ever made in my life, I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility. And it felt a little weird to make money that I hadn't had before. And the conclusion I came to for myself was that responsibility needs to be given back in a way that helps to solve the issues in the world. And as I looked at the issues in the world, I realized, wow, they are really, really big. And they're not something that one single person can donate to and fix. And they're not something that can just be changed, that they're structural, integral parts of our economy that rely on the way things are. And so the only way to really change things and make a difference is to change the way companies are run. And I believe that definitely capitalism is going to be the solution to the world's problems, but we have to tweak it. And so the way that I have viewed that is, let's tweak capitalism by making sure we set a little bit aside in our budget to give back and to make sure that we've sourced responsibly and to make sure that we're not destroying the earth as we build these companies. One initiative we're doing right now, which you didn't mention, but I've talked a little bit about, is our tea bags, for example, are made out of plastic today. And we know recyclable plastic, less than 5% of it gets recycled. And so even though the bag was recyclable, I'm sitting there going, well, it's mostly being thrown away, practically speaking. And so we're getting out of plastic bags. And so that's going to cost us a little bit. Donating a meal for every shipment that goes out the door costs us a little bit. Sourcing beans so that we know that they come from fair wage and good for the world places costs us a little bit more. And by the way, I don't know if you saw, but over the weekend, The Guardian released a TV expose against Starbucks and Nestle for child labor practices on their farms. And so that's something where I don't lose any sleep at night over those kind of issues, because I know ahead of time that we've done the right things and put the right things in place to be a responsible member of the planet.
Super interesting. I mean, do you believe that a social mission is required in today's business climate, especially among, I would say, kind of like the discerning younger consumers like Gen Z?
I do think consumers care more about where their products are coming from, and that if a company takes the time to share their story, that it can matter. At the end of the day, the vast, vast majority of products are not coming from socially responsible companies. So today, the vote of the world's economy says that you don't have to be a socially responsible company to sell product. The growth that is occurring is coming, though, from socially responsible companies. And there's some new data coming out. This concept has only existed for, in a meaningful way, 5 to 10 years. There are studies now coming out showing that socially responsible companies have lower cost of sales. They have better employee retention rates, so they're not spending time retraining employees. They have higher valuations, and they're ultimately worth more. And so there's a new kind of trend and body of data and information coming out that says, actually, if you're a pure on hardcore raging capitalist, that there is a reason now to be a socially responsible company beyond feeling good about it. And so that's where I'm betting, is that there's an ethical responsibility to do better as a leader of a company, but there's also just a straight up, on behalf of my shareholders, on behalf of my employees, on behalf of my customers, there's a payoff to being a socially run company. And so I think it's a little bit of both, that both parts of the brain are going to win out in our entrepreneurs. And so I'm trying to adopt these policies and practices for both reasons.
So kind of to wrap it up here, what's next for Akira Coffee Company? I mean, what do you think is next for companies like yours, kind of servicing the creator economy, or like what's your outlook for this year and beyond?
I think for us and for anyone who's playing in the creator direct-to-consumer physical product business, it's really going to be figuring out, how do you tap into, relatively speaking, small pools of audiences and convert that into a meaningful line of business. At the end of the day, I could make 100 bags of coffee with a creator who is very small, but would that be worth it for them? But 1 million bags of coffee is definitely worth it. And so somewhere in between 1 million and 100 units is a meaningful business for creators. And that's what we're continuing to dial in. And whether that's a candle, a soap, a coffee, a tea, we're very interested in figuring out the way a creator connects to their audience and can turn that into a physical product brand that they're an owner of.
Super interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, David. How can people find out more about Akira Coffee Company or connect with you?
Yeah, we're at akiracoffeeco.com. And I'm a pretty active LinkedIn user. So if you want to message me, connect with me on LinkedIn, that's an easy way to do it. Otherwise, fill out our contact us form and we'll keep an eye on that and would be happy to get back to you. I will say if there's any talent managers, artists, creators who this resonated with, the door's wide open. We're happy to have a conversation with you about what we're up to.
Amazing. You've just listened to the Sponsored Post podcast with your host, Justin Moore. You can subscribe to hear more great interviews and episodes via Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Trending Family, you can visit trendingfamily.com. See you next time.